App Store is now live. The time has come and you can now get your app submitted and available in the App Store. So far, it's been the major brands that have had their apps in there, and those are all still available. You can go to the App Store and get those connected. But for the first time ever, the public can now go and submit their applications. OpenAI are actively reviewing them, and this means that you have the chance to get your app in front of the 850 plus million weekly active users for on ChatGPT. So today we are going to run through the new App Store, what it looks like, the new applications that are involved in it, some latest testing on those applications so that we can understand how best you can get them to work for yourself. Additionally, we're going to talk about monetization, very important. How are you going to make money with these apps and run through the latest documentation they've released. We're then going to talk through the app submission process. To get your app live, you're going to have to submit it to OpenAI. They're going to review it and decide if it gets on there. That is going to be really important for things like getting your app discovered, optimized for getting people to want to click on it and get it installed. So we're going to run through all of that today. I think the first thing that we're going to run through, if I just share my screen, is we've got the App Store. So honestly, very cool to see this. And this is basically a first version of what it looks like. So if you navigate in your ChatGPT, let's say you're on a query here, if you go into settings, personalization and apps, and then add more, you get taken to this window. And in here, you've got a featured section. You can see maybe they're paying for this sponsorship. We don't know yet, but that might be future ad placements. And then we've got all of their featured apps. So again, maybe prioritized in some way. You can see here what's quite interesting is there are a lot of productivity apps, and then there are only a few lifestyle. And I think maybe, Vince, we can discuss why that is, but I know there's been a lot of talk recently from ChatGPT on how they are looking to double down on enterprise in 2026, and that's going to be a theme. And I think you can really see that in the applications that are now available. So the ones they've added a ton, and they've done a lot of marketing around it. The ones that have just come out in the last batch are things like Clay. They have all the Adobe suite of apps, which we've done some extensive testing on. They've got Salesforce, and the other ones, Lovable and Replit. Those were the other two major ones. And again, we're going to run through some examples. And for me, it really feels like they are trying to make ChatGPT the place you go to get work done. And it's more than just kind of doing your basic prompts. They have got some lifestyle stuff. Obviously, they're a consumer app, but they know that if they want to get really, really high volume of usage and capture a wider market, productivity is the best way to go. But Vince, I wonder what your reflections are on the apps we've seen so far.
Well, if you take a step back and think about the operating system thesis, OpenAI is trying to become an operating system for app. If you were to launch an operating system like, it's the 80s and you're launching first version of Windows, what are the apps you're going to launch? They're largely going to be email, productivity, something like a spreadsheet, Word editor, print something. So the very basic building blocks you'd expect a machine or an assistant to be able to do. But I think, like when I look at this Adobe one, where if you're in business, you're constantly dealing with PDFs, you'll need some sort of Acrobat reader on whatever operating system you're going to launch. But it almost feels like these are kind of the fundamentals. I don't expect this to be a productivity heavy suite in a few months because we also haven't really been able to see something like booking rides with Uber, food delivery, more sophisticated, video editing, which I think will come. I think we're looking at the building blocks, and it makes sense because a lot of us use ChatGPT for productivity purposes. Help me get something done. Here's the data. I think we're already seeing a lot of booking apps that they put that on their lifestyle, don't they? And this is also something where it's just like, help me get something done. It's very straightforward and clear. By the way, I had a question. Some of them have check marks, Elliot. Are those apps you downloaded, or does that mean something else?
Those are the apps that I've
I mean,
already
activated.
connected, activated.
Okay,
And
got it.
what's
Yeah.
really interesting, and I have no idea why this is, maybe it's because I've been going backwards and forwards with the VPNs that I've got connected to access stuff in the US, but literally just now refreshing this page, I've just got a limited number of lifestyle apps. I think I even demoed a second ago there being more on the screen. So I don't know why that is and
Mm.
whether that's that they are purposefully
It
limiting some
probably
of the ones.
is a VPN thing. Are you out of the US now?
Yes. So currently not
That's why.
connected to the US, so I can connect to the US and then see. But interesting why they've maybe this is just the European productivity suite, for example. They've got a lot of productivity apps that are there. But anyway, on the operating system point, I completely agree. And it is definitely the direction that they're heading. And I think you can also see just in the way that they are, it feels to me like even if you've got things like Lovable and Replit, which arguably in a lot of ways you can do within ChatGPT. So, you can go to ChatGPT and actually create a website and you could go and create a basic application. They've got a coding suite. You could also go to ChatGPT and do some of the things with Photoshop. You can edit photos. So why are they bringing in these other applications that compete? And I think it's actually a good signal. They are not looking at, oh, okay, at least at today's date, what competes with us, what doesn't, and then what should we make available and what shouldn't we? They're bringing all applications in. Even if you could go to them and edit your image model, they're allowing Photoshop to do it. So I think that's a really good signal. And it feels like to me, like you said at the beginning of these creating a new OS, what they're really trying to do in a lot of ways is just become the door of the internet. That's what you want to become. You want to be the place that people go to get work done and to do much more. And so, you know, you could just go directly to any of these applications, but it makes much more sense to kind of be the place where you start all of these workflows. And so I'm very, very interested over time if that becomes the sort of native way that people start to search from, rather than going to Google. And I did some early testing as well on a couple of the applications, and I thought I'd make a few call outs. I wanted to test the Replit apps. Generally, just think this is interesting. I think they've noticed that a lot of people are actually going to ChatGPT to brainstorm around things that they could build and make. So they wanted to build it into these workflows. Interestingly, I did the exact same prompt in both Lovable and Replit, and I got a great response actually with the Replit piece. The website itself needs a bit of updating, but I think a general good design at the beginning that will take maybe a minute to load. I got an error actually with the Lovable one, and that is just I think showing that it's really early days, and we're going to have to find that some of these apps are going to need a ton of iteration, and it's pretty clear they asked all these apps to just go to market with something, and there's clearly been a time pressure on it, and so there's definitely been some rushing that's happened as well. But don't be surprised if you get some of these errors. And the other thing I found is I had to do this at the end. I couldn't just tag it. Just tagging it didn't get the result. I had to mention explicitly to use the app. So we'll get onto sort of like prompting and when apps appear and when they don't. But at the moment, those are some tips worth being very explicit when you go through and look at the, calling out of applications and using them and things like this. Another thing that's just been released as well is details on monetization. So I'll just share the documents that they've got on the monetization side, and we'll share this in the detail in the comments. And basically, what you need to understand is there's two ways to monetize. So you've got external checkout, which means you will take payment outside of ChatGPT, and then there is instant checkout payment that happens actually directly within ChatGPT. Now, at the moment, what they're recommending is you just should do everything on your side. So if you're looking to basically get someone to subscribe, let's say Lovable, for example, want someone to subscribe, that's going to happen on their platform. But if you are someone, in certain areas and you're in the private beta, you will be part of that first experience where actually you can check out within ChatGPT. Now, that is only for really limited users because obviously they're having to do a lot of work on figuring out, okay, how are we going to get in ChatGPT purchasing to work? It's using the APC protocol, so a payments protocol that they developed. I believe it was co-developed with Stripe. And that's obviously early testing. So at the moment, they're doing external payments when you're thinking about monetizing your app. But I believe at some point, this will be available to everyone, and then it'll be a choice for you to make around when to get people to subscribe. And something that we did just to show you what this instant checkout looks like is we have added Instacart onto apps on ChatGPT. It was just a directory of all apps, and you can simulate any app. So it's got a video of understanding how the app works. You don't have to go through the whole process every time. And you can see here, for example, if you are, working on, if you're using Instacart, for example, and you want to do your groceries. So let's say you just asked us to do your groceries there, then it's asking you a bit more information. And then you've got the store flow. So you click on the store and then you select your items. I won't go through all of those parts. But then when you get to the checkout, you can see here you start to do a checkout flow. So you can see the amount that you need to pay within the app. You need to add in your payment details. And then you get this screen, which is the direct checkout. So you pay with Instacart, or you can pay with Google, and you've got your card details in there. And as you can see, you haven't had to leave ChatGPT to do that experience. So pretty cool, early days, and not everyone can do this right now. So it's better to think about, the external monetization, but this is definitely coming down the pipe.
I think they say recommended to do it off platform because they're not ready, or they think it's really the target experience.
I think that they're just not ready. It's kind of like rolling out the way they've rolled out applications. So they are doing this almost as like a private beta, the same way that they had, 10 apps at the start, and then they'll slowly roll it out. I think they're going to do the exact same playbook here.
So it also makes me think about that one kind of when they announced the in-app in ChatGPT payment, there was quite some voices about, well, consumers might not want this. Same as that we don't really want to pay inside Instagram or social media apps. It may also be a little bit of thinking to actually help app builders design journeys that users are more comfortable with. Just thinking out loud here.
Yeah, yeah, definitely.
I
Definitely
could
think
imagine
it's,
some people would like this. But yeah, the kind of I think Instagram has even stopped doing their e-commerce layer, right? Because it just wasn't working. People just weren't comfortable purchasing right on a social media platform. They wanted to do that on an e-commerce website. I think the verdict still remains open on, do people want to do groceries in a ChatGPT agent interface, or do they want to get redirected to Instacart where they're comfortable to put in their credit card and pay?
yeah, and I think it's going to be an interesting experiment and figure it out. And I think if they have the infrastructure to kind of understand, okay, this is how it would work, they can figure out the use cases where people are comfortable and they aren't. I think the other thing to understand about the e-commerce space specifically, because they are focusing on e-commerce first, is it isn't as simple as just there is a whole infrastructure layer within the e-commerce world to help promote products, pay for products, and everything that sits below it. And we can share some references in the comments. And I've seen some discussion on the fact that actually within the LLM space, to get the e-commerce world to work efficiently, there's much more than just enabling the payments protocol. You need to well recommend products. You then have obviously all the payment infrastructure and everything that sits around it. There's many considerations to work out. So are people paying and they're comfortable to pay one vertical? But there's a whole side of e-commerce as well that's going to need to be figured out for LLMs to be a good recommendation compared to like the whole infrastructure the internet is built on to support that use case. So yeah, we'll see. Like you pointed out, few apps are involved, and I'll do some early testing to see how people react to it and are they comfortable doing it. I personally have no issue doing this. I mean, they have my card details, so I'm personally paying
I'm
for
not surprised.
ChatGPT. So I'm a paid subscriber. I'm only 5% of the subscriber base, so it's a small number, but
Yeah, although
we'll see.
5% of 800 million is a lot of people.
Yeah, that have chosen to pay ChatGPT. So,
Yeah.
but it's a good point. Compare it to social, and you can see the comparison. But I think about those guidelines, review them in detail, and I think about the offboarding flow when you are looking at the monetization side. And we will, over time, as we're launching more of these, share some great workflows that we've seen to take you from ChatGPT to getting someone to pay. Because I think that's the really killer flow. How can you customize the experience so that you can make sure when someone goes through that flow, they go to a page where they get the best experience, and then you can convert them. Maybe Vince, do you want to talk about the example that you saw around booking.com or Expedia, I think it was, where they have a tailored experience specifically once you go from ChatGPT to their domain?
Yeah, I can't show an example. I think I just read about it. They were experimenting with a user flow where instead of going straight into booking a property or a hotel, you would first go to a intermediate page, which is designed to be tailored and customized kind of to the search query you are looking for. So if you're looking for hotels in New York, you would go to an intermediate page that gives you kind of a rich set of options, maybe something you're used to, and then you book, right? So they're kind of, it's not a direct checkout, it's kind of a more of a continue your journey, but continue already starting with the context of the conversation you've had with ChatGPT. But I think that's something we'll see a lot more where the app is really just the top of the funnel, and then users will probably quickly select to still go into the booking app or a booking landing page, not per se just to check out, but just to continue to something that they're used to. And what's nice about that is some of the early work, you can call it, has been done by ChatGPT, like the what do I want? Do I want a hotel with pools in New York near here? You know, you could use natural language for that. It's almost like an interface for their website, right? And then you'll get redirected to the rich search that matches your query.
Yeah, and I think that makes a lot of sense because you're building these personalized workflows, which is going to end up being the best way to get people to have the experience that they're looking for and then convert them. And what's smart about building your app early within ChatGPT is you're going to be first, you are discovering as early as possible the prompts that people are using to activate your app, what tools are being called. So basically, within a ChatGPT app, you have certain tools. A tool is an action. And so you'll be able to see based on what tools are being called within your app, okay, that's what people are using my app for. That's what people are typically prompting and can be useful. Then you can backwards engineer, therefore, where you want to focus. So I think great to get these things in early and test them. Now, the other thing that we want to go through is app submission. So super important. Anyone that's come from the mobile app store game understands the headaches you can have to go through to get your app submitted. Not only do you have to do it when you first get your app submitted, that's the most sort of, I suppose, like full review. But every time you upload or improve, refine your application, you have to resubmit again. There'll be someone that checks. So we're going to go through that just now. And quickly, just before we do, I want you to sort of just as a reminder, understand the page at least you're optimizing. So every app will have one of these pages. It will have a title, it will have a subtitle, you will have App Store screenshots, descriptions, and then to base information as well, the website. So we're going to go through it in a second, Vince. I think you can share your screen and we're going to just run through it. But that's the page you need to be thinking about in particular as we run through this, where you want to be optimizing.
Yeah, so we'll quickly run through what is the journey of submitting an app. It's pretty straightforward. Let me share my screen. If you have a business enterprise account or paid account, you'll have access to this platform.openai.com. This is also where you'd be able to get your API keys if you ever played around with that. There's a couple interesting tools here, and now they have added the ChatGPT apps. So this is how you as a developer can manage review. There has to be some sort of, I think it's a manual review from the OpenAI team. So we'll definitely be playing around with that, seeing how that works. But today we can talk about what do you need to have to get an app, submitted for review. I took an app that we built, almost like 2 months ago now. It's a little app that lets you put in a tweet and create this kind of gradient image, and you could directly share it to X. Just a fun little app that we played around with. And I went ahead and went through the process. It took me, I think, end to end, maybe about an hour. It all filled in, and a lot of it's just dummy data. So it's not a crazy heavy lift, but you do need to have quite a lot of assets prepared, and you do need to do something called tests, and we'll talk about that in a moment. In addition to just having, your app ready for production and deployment. So on the app info, you're going to get all the stuff you expect. You're going to need a logo, light and dark, um, name, subtitle, description. What's nice is they do have very helpful tooltips. The category where we saw the productivity and lifestyle already. So this gives you a hint on what it'll probably look like in a few months when we're going to start to see more categories. Developer, website URL, support, privacy policy, terms, a demo recording URL. My guess is that this would be their internal review. Like they said, you can use developer mode. It wouldn't be for external marketing. Um, all of these are required. Then at the end, they have the apps, commerce, and purchasing section where there's a couple tick boxes where you self-declare if your app is going to direct users off the platform for a purchase, and a few other ones, right? So in this case, I don't we don't have any purchasing happening, but that's the information they're collecting at the top level. If you go to the
Yeah.
MCP
I-
server, go ahead.
Yeah, I think just one thing to call out there. I think the specific flows that they are talking about in relation to purchasing is if you have it very explicitly saying like this item to purchase, and then you have to click on that purchase button, then go off and pay. That is separate from, if someone goes from ChatGPT, completes a workflow, goes to your like SaaS, for example, and then would choose to subscribe. So I don't think you necessarily need to call it out. It should be like this, as you said, links or direct users directly to make a purchase. So I think I call that out just because I think if you do click that button, they're going to be a lot more explicit, or they're going to be they're going to look at it in a lot more detail. So only click that if it's sort of a direct purchase link, and then it happens outside.
I think they're also covering a little bit of their liability here because you're going to have to agree to more terms and conditions. What it seems like, they're not trying to take a cut or monetize your app at this point in time. They're interested in you submitting, right? So I would argue this is a pretty low barrier for a commercial app, or tick boxes and a few sentences. But you're right, we don't know how stringent the reviews would be. For the MCP server, you put in your production URL. I had OAuth on this one, so when I press scan tools, it actually had me go through an OAuth journey that it could connect. And it found the tools. There's two tools. One is to get a Twitter profile, another one is to create the tweet with the gradient. It then asked me to verify this domain to prove that I'm the owner. And what it did is it gave me a token I had to upload to the server. I pressed verify and it verified instantly. It worked really well. And then you can see it has a domain verified tick mark. And then you get into test cases. First, you give test credentials. So if your app is behind some sort of credential where you need to log in, make sure that the reviewer on OpenAI will be able to get in. They say it has to work instantly. So that will definitely get you knocked down if that doesn't work well. And then you need to provide, and the burden is on you to show the test cases that show the functionality that you intend. So a scenario, and here they give some examples: research flights, create a slideshow. What is the prompt? What is the tool that will be triggered? What is the expected output? So when you go through these, and they expect at least five, make sure that you're using your own environment, your own chat GPT, to make sure that this is as deterministic as possible, because here's where they're going to test, are you actually advertising what is possible is going to happen. Interestingly, they also do negative test cases. So this is examples where your app should not trigger. So if you're booking flights and you say book a hotel, you do not want your app to trigger, right? So that's also going to be something they're going to look at to make sure that your app is really focused on the value that it's. Finally, you're going to have to upload screenshots with some very strict dimensions. It needs to be exactly 706 pixels wide. So make sure you work with your designer to get it pixel perfect. And it makes sense because they're actually going to put it in this type of template. You can go to the chat GPT. You can kind of see this is a little bit the UI they're going to do. See, like prompt, screenshot. So here you're going to get to write your prompt. This is just you update it right here, and then you show the screenshot. You can do up to four of these, and then these are going to be the ones you're going to see right top center, your landing page in the App Store. This is
Yeah.
very important to show off, right? What are the use cases, the visuals, the experience that you're going to give your users when they interact with this.
Exactly. And anyone that's also been in the mobile app game understands the importance of screenshots. This is your real estate. This is what helps you to get someone to click that connect button. And importantly, what you'll notice there is they've not just got the screenshot visual, they've got, like, particularly in the Apple use case, every piece that they have, every prompt is showing, okay, these are the top prompts that I'd like people to recommend trying. So it's backwards engineering, okay, what are people going to want out of this app, and making it as compelling as possible for someone to then click that download button.
And then finally, you can submit translations to your app. So you can, we can create a Danish version of our tweet app. What do you think, Elliot? Capture the Danish market.
Yeah, why not?
But English is mandatory, so you cannot unselect English. And I imagine where you're going to see this, and you can see this here, like description, subtitle. This will be for instance, the App Store. So if you access it from Denmark, you would see the Danish descriptions. I think for the app itself, that's up to you, right? That's something you control. This is only for the metadata for the App Store. Here you do see also the geographic restrictions or limitations. I believe if you just leave it blank, it's global. They've now rolled out the apps globally, I think. I don't think there's anywhere they're restricting it. But if you want to say I only want to allow it in the US, you just use the two-letter country codes, US and Canada, and then it'll only be available there. Just like we saw with the VPN, Elliot, that some of these lifestyle apps just live disappear. So that's it. That would be the whole process. You go ahead and click continue, and then it would you give a few policy check marks, terms and conditions, submitting it as an individual or a business. You then submit it for review.
Yeah.
I think it's not a crazy difficult process. Of course, you do need to have that production app ready. There's going to be a manual review. Right now, we don't have any information on how fast it would go or how stringent they're looking at it. But like we encourage you to try just like we will be.
Yeah, spot on. And I think a couple other things I think to call out. One is discoverability. So we've spoken about optimizing for the App Store. And my guess is that as there's an increasing number of apps within the App Store, you are going to need to optimize to be found within that App Store. So when you see the keywords that you're using in the description, when you have the name of the app, the subtitle, these are all critical pieces of real estate. You need to be optimizing the keywords that you're using there so that when someone searches in that top right bar, they will actually find your app over any others that are competing for the same real estate. So very early, right? You've only got a few pieces in there, but soon that will be filling up. And so you want to make sure that you're appearing at the top of that search trend. So that's one piece. Then I would say, additionally, they're going to be using the same probably testing prompts and also the keywords that you've got and things internally within the app, such as the metadata descriptions, everything that you've got around the prompt set. They're going to use that to then figure out, okay, when could we do organic discoverability for these apps as well? And that's also very early. We know that they had rolled that out. People thought it was ads. So actually finding apps organically within search. And I believe they've turned it off and it's still off, but that will get turned back on. So you want to make sure, again, you're really optimizing for exactly everything that you've got within the app's metadata and everything like that to make sure that, yeah, you're getting the most visibility that you can. Yeah, this is a good example, right?
This is a quick example.
Yeah. So for example, if you see here, there's been a response that's happened in relation to a hotel. And then obviously just text is not that helpful, even just some basic imagery. So they've then pushed Expedia's application after the response. So it's not affected the response in any way, but you could then use the application of Expedia if you wanted to book through Expedia directly within ChatGPT without having to leave. So that's the real estate you're looking for. And this will be opened up in no time. I have no doubt, because they're going to want to help promote developers to get free discoverability. And so, yeah, this will be coming back, and we're going to be sharing a lot more information on how to get discovered in ChatGPT as well. Final point I'd mention that I think is interesting is we are seeing that there's no money that ChatGPT are making from apps that are launching at the moment. So when Apple launched back in 2009, their App Store, they were from day one taking a 30% commission. But OpenAI is not doing that here. And they're not even doing that. Not only are they not doing that with an external checkout, they're not even doing it, as I understand, with an internal checkout either. Now, that's a strategic choice. And clearly, not only with the fact they're allowing apps that are technically slightly competing with some of their use cases, and the fact that they are not taking payments, the reason, or commission from payments, the reason I believe they're doing this is because of basically just how competitive this space is. They know that they are basically just using the apps as the best way to build out the platform and ecosystem, and they don't want any barrier for people to just think it's makes complete sense to have an app there. That's why I think they'll keep no commission for as long as possible. They will keep getting as many apps on board for as long as possible. They will continue to have organic discoverability for developers for as long as possible. And eventually the barriers will close down. They'll start to take these payments. But for now, I think it's one of the best times ever, if you look at this trend over time and what will happen with this app store, to be building, because it's very orientated towards developers and making sure that they get the benefits.
Oh, stay tuned.
Stay tuned, exactly. We will continue to be sharing updates and lots on building hacks, how the submission process works, reviews as well, because they're going to come back with feedback. So you're going to need to iterate on that, and then how to get discovered. And we'll also be continuing to update the apps on ChatGPT resource. There's a ton of stuff that's going on there, including lots of tools that you can use to build these apps. So definitely check that out, and we will share it in the comments.